Hello and welcome to the International Students and Scholars Office Curricular Practical Training Workshop. Curricular Practical Training, commonly called CPT, is a type of employment authorization available to F1 students to engage in work experiences that are directly related to their major course of study. Whether you have already received a job opportunity or if you are attending this workshop to learn more about the authorization process in hopes of receiving a future opportunity, we are here to provide you with information about how to successfully maintain your F1 immigration status while engaging in an off-campus work experience. This workshop will contain 3 sections. First, an overview of the CPT process, what it is and who is eligible. Then, a detailed look at the CPT application process itself, from receiving the initial offer from the employer to enrolling in the appropriate CPT-related course, and then finally submitting the work authorization request with ISSO. Finally, we will discuss specific CPT-related policies and address some frequently asked questions that we see from students. Section 1, CPT Overview. CPT is a type of work authorization, usually for an off-campus employer, which facilitates an academic learning experience, allowing an F1 international student to directly apply the theoretical knowledge gained through their coursework in a professional environment. It is important to note that the experience is curricular in nature, that is the C in CPT, meaning that the experience relates to and enriches the student's academic program. In practice, this means that you will enroll in a course at Iowa State to specifically oversee the CPT experience. Any employment offer must be directly related to a student's major course of study, and the job cannot be solely related to a minor or certificate program. CPT is authorized at a specific education level, bachelor's, master's, or doctorate, and it can be authorized in multiple terms. However, students must receive the CPT authorization from ISSO before beginning any work. There are many benefits to a CPT work experience. First, the experience is intended to provide you with valuable practical training in your field of study, as well as experience working in the United States for a U.S. company. Some students are able to turn a successful internship experience into a full-time offer after graduation. An internship or other short-term work experience is also a valuable opportunity to develop what are called soft skills, or your ability to interact effectively and harmoniously with other people. In a workplace setting, soft skills include your ability to work as a team, your ability to professionally communicate with colleagues or supervisors, and understanding the expectations of a professional work environment. So who is eligible for CPT? First, students must be in a valid F1 immigration status and an enrolled student at Iowa State University. Then, the student must have been enrolled for at least one consecutive academic year at Iowa State. This means the student was meeting their full-time enrollment requirements in an on-campus program for the 2 semesters immediately preceding the CPT request. Finally, the student must be making normal progress towards degree completion, as the off-campus work experience should not interfere with an individual's primary purpose for being in the United States, which is to be a full-time student. What would make a student ineligible for CPT? First, if they have completed all degree requirements. There is another type of work authorization called optional practical training, or OPT, designed for after students have completed all coursework requirements. Second, if a student has submitted this OPT request and their application is pending or approved, then they are not eligible for a new CPT authorization. Third, if a student has not been enrolled at Iowa State for one academic year preceding the CPT request. Fourth, if the CPT experience is solely based on a student's minor. And finally, a student is not eligible for a CPT authorization if the request is solely for the purposes of facilitating employment, rather than for an academic learning purpose. There are 2 types of CPT authorizations: Part-time CPT is when the work experience is 20 hours per week or fewer, while full-time CPT is when the work experience is more than 20 hours per week. For part-time CPT, there is a strict maximum of 20 hours per week in any given work week. This is not an average. You can't do 15 one week and 25 the next week. For full-time CPT, there is not a maximum number of hours that you are restricted to, but the employer must comply with all U.S. labor laws, so most full-time positions are around 40 hours per week. Distinguishing between part-time and full-time CPT is very important, as there are certain restrictions on the amount of CPT you can utilize while remaining eligible for other employment benefits. Your total CPT time used counts all of the days between your approved CPT start and end date, which may include weekends, holidays, and days that you were approved but on leave from the company. If you are authorized for 365 or more days of full-time CPT usage, then you are no longer eligible to apply for optional practical training, which is the 1 to 3 year work period F1 students can apply for after degree completion. Again, this only applies to full-time CPT usage, and there is technically no maximum to the amount of part-time CPT you can use. Although a student using part-time CPT must continue to be a full-time student and meet all normal enrollment requirements. Further, a CPT authorization cannot interfere with a student making sufficient academic progress in their program, and a student can never extend their academic program for the sole purposes of utilizing a CPT work authorization. It is important to note that CPT is a fixed term authorization, meaning that it must have a clearly defined start and end date. CPT is typically authorized on a term-by-term basis, but this really depends on what terms you are eligible to enroll in at the time you are submitting your request. You must be enrolled in the CPT-related course to be eligible for the authorization. So if you are requesting an authorization that covers multiple terms, you may need to submit only a request for the current term now, and then a request for an extension into the next term once you are able to enroll. Allowed start dates. A CPT authorization can go as early as the final week of the term previous. For example, a summer CPT request could start as early as finals week of the spring semester. However, for students that are finishing their second semester at Iowa State, your first CPT experience cannot start until after you have fully completed 2 semesters. Allowable end dates. A CPT experience can end as late as the day before the start of the next term. For example, a summer CPT request could be authorized up through the Sunday before the start of fall classes. The exception to this is students that are in their final semester. If you will be completing your program in the current term, then your CPT request cannot go beyond the final day of the term, as that will be your I-20 program end date. Working in the United States without proper authorization can have severe immigration consequences. First, if ISSO receives documented evidence of unauthorized employment, then your F1 immigration status must be terminated. All employment authorizations, either on-campus or off-campus jobs, are then also terminated. The student who committed the status violation must then work with an ISSO advisor on options to regain their valid F1 immigration status. This process can be costly, time-consuming, or likely both. Further, losing your valid F1 immigration status can impact your eligibility for future immigration benefits, such as applying for OPT or changing immigration statuses in the future.